herself. There's a photograph, too, that he keeps on the inside pocket of his suitcase, she went on. It's of a woman. There are a lot of fragments coming from that picture, but they're mixed. The feelings of them are all mixed up. I try to sift through and collect the good parts. And really, that's all. His clothes don't give me much of anything. The social work lady bought his clothes. So really all that's worth touching, are the chrysalis and the seashell and the picture. But then elderly, she looked up at him. Guess what? He started to look at her quizzically. What? He's starting to love the dog. I can feel it. And so, then elderly, hesitating, considered what she had said. I need to touch the dog. Lightly, of course, in a very gossamer way. And I can give the boy that. The love feelings, along with the gentle chrysalis feelings, and the warm happiness seashell feelings, and the good part of the photograph feelings. It will make it work better, adding the dog. I'm sure of it. Make him much, much stronger against the nightmares. She looked up at Thin Elderly. Could I try at least? She pleaded. Thin Elderly eased himself up from the huddling place. 3 nights in a row they had to hide this way, hunched over. He was achy. Come with me, he whispered. The woman is worn out from getting up at night. I'm going to bestow a wonderful restorative dream on her. I've collected it from the parlor. I found it there in the old crocheted afghan that she keeps over the back of the sofa. Her mother wrapped her in that afghan one Christmas morning when she was a very little girl. There was snow outside and the new doll under the tree, and it was one of the happiest mornings of her life. I was quite delighted to find it there unused, ready to be collected. While I'm doing that, littlest one, you may touch the dog. Oh, thank you, she whispered. No need for thanks, he replied. No time. We must work quickly. We must try to help the boy. Chapter 19. You say you allowed her to touch a dog? I did, most ancient. The dog was sleeping deeply, and her touch is exquisite. Very, very delicate. She calls it gossamer. Then elderly smiled. Most ancient, though he tried to look stern, smiled as well. She is a dear little thing, isn't she? I cannot understand why Fastidious found her so difficult. Well, then elderly replied, she's fastidious. Most ancient chuckled. Still, he said, we must keep in mind that the rules do prohibit touching living creatures. It's for our own safety, really. I understand. This did seem a special case, though. They were seated together some distance from the heap. Most ancient no longer went out on the night work. He stayed here, pondering difficulties, adjudicating disputes, thinking deeply about the dream givers and their responsibilities and problems. Thin Elderly had come to him at the end of the night, and while the others, including the littlest one, were arranging themselves for sleep, he had confided to Most Ancient the problem of the small boy, John, and confessed what he had done. The boy was weakening, you say. Most Ancient furrowed his brow, thinking about it. Yes, it was quite clear. He had suffered recurring inflictions night after night, and Littlest had so few fragments to give him strength. It was she who realized that he was beginning to love the dog. I've always been partial to dogs myself. Don't know why we don't have any. You'd think a dream-giving dog would be a great asset, wouldn't you? Could bestow on other dogs? I always found those ears difficult when I was bestowing. I remember once. Then Elderly sighed. Most Ancient's mind wandered a bit these days. He tended to digress, to tell stories from the past, and sometimes the stories again and again. Thin Elderly had heard this one several times, but he waited patiently until Most Ancient concluded. Then he said, I believe, sir, if you don't mind our going back to the problem of littlest one, that she actually did the boy a great good. After she did the touching of the dog, and the dog didn't stir at all, he slept right through it, she immediately went across the hall, gathered herself and the new fragments, and fluttered up and bestowed them on the boy. Was there a reaction? Immediately, sir. He had been restless, tossing, whimpering, and occasionally we heard him cry out in his sleep. The woman had hurried to comfort him. She had to do that night after night, and it's taking a toll on her, too. She's quite tired. So let me see if I'm following this correctly. The boy had a nightmare, most ancient sighed. How I hate that word. But he had a nightmare and cried out, and the woman comforted him. Where were you then, and littlest? Huddled. Lately we've had to huddle a great deal. We have a special place in the hall, deep in the shadows by the attic stairs. Sometimes we dissolve. So the boy went back to his restless sleep. Do I have that right? Yes, tossing and turning. And the woman went back to her bed to sleep. The dog never woke. He sleeps right through every night. You waited. The two of you? Yes, to give the woman some time to get back to sleep. I was eager, actually, because I had a particularly wonderful dream to give to her. I discovered some fragments in an Afghan. You're digressing, most anciently said in a kindly way. Sorry, you're right. The notary chuckled, wondering if he was becoming as bad as most ancient. Old age did that to you. When did she touch the dog? Did you know she was going to? Did she have your permission? Yes, she had asked permission, and I thought it over very carefully and told her that she could. I knew it was against the rules, but this seemed a special situation. So we waited until the woman was asleep again, and the dog, of course, had never stirred at all. Then I went to bestow on the woman, and Littlest fluttered over and touched the dog. I finished my bestowal quickly. You probably remember, most ancient, how smoothly those good bestowals go, how quickly. Most ancient nodded. Yes, very pleasurable. So I was able to watch while she touched the dog. It was truly exquisite, most ancient. She was smiling. You know how tiny she is, and still close to transparent, though she's starting to fill out. She fluttered here and there about the dog. Reaching down, she seemed to concentrate on the neck area. Why there, I wonder? She explained later, it's where the boy most often strokes and scratches the dog. So there were many fragments there of affection and companionship. Those were the fragments she wanted. She has a keen sense for it, doesn't she? Then Elderly nodded. She does indeed. And to think, touching a living creature. I've never seen it done before. She went about it as if it came naturally to her, and her touch was so Gossamer. Then Elderly smiled. Exactly. I believe we'll not make a fuss about the rule. It seems clear that she broke it for good reason, and of course with permission from you. The bestowal went well? Calmed the boy? Oh, yes, immediately. She gave him a dream of the dog, and he actually smiled in his sleep. Well then, most ancient said, we'll sleep now too. Then Elderly, you and I. It's been a long night's work, and we're both getting old. He added his usual little joke. Sweet dreams. All right, that is the next 3 chapters. We'll start on 20 tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts about the book, put them in the comments.